listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
All right, everyone, we are absolutely live on a Monday morning, trying to get the kinks worked out of the technology. So, you got everything you need to get going there? No, it's there. It's just being weird this morning. Technology is fun when it works right, and it's great when everything's fine, but when it doesn't work right, it's kind of miserable. But, there you go. Today, something really fun's going to happen. We're going to look at getting the leaven out. And a lot of people don't understand what this is all about. They don't realize what it is. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of the why. We're going to look at some of the traditions that are surrounding that, though, and how that came about. Thank you for letting us be part of your day as we go through this and do all kinds of fun things today. So you're still getting rearranged, aren't you?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. We're here and looking at this, and I've had some inquiries about this, and it's just kind of strange. You know, we've been doing this for 10 years almost. Something like that. And when people first start thinking about this seriously, they look at it differently than they do other times, in other ways. For many Christians, they hear about getting the leaven out. They look in the Gospels and they hear Yeshua, Jesus speaking about the leaven of the Pharisees and that kind of thing, and they don't equate a lot of things together. And that's something we're going to look at a little bit, but not get into. Like I said, I want to concentrate today on just the traditions that surround this and why they're there. There's a whole lot to consider. We think about Passover. Do we have a Seder? Do we do something different that still teaches the lesson that we learn in Exodus? This year for Messianic Delaware, we're not actually going to do a traditional Seder. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to look at Passover kind of around the world and have different dishes that are typically served at Passover dinners around the world.
Right. So
that's going to be kind of fun.
It's going to be exciting.
Looking forward to some good food. We have some good cooks come here, so that's a benefit we get. There's preparations for Passover. People like to banish the leaven from their homes. The yeast, the baking soda, the fruit, the potatoes, the sugar, and the wine. Anything that could possibly cause dough to rise. Right?
Right.
Wrong.
No, they do that.
Oh, they do that, yes. But it's how much of it is real, how much of it is tradition. That's what we're going to look at. And you'd be amazed at some of the things I've read, some of the people I've listened to, and it's absolutely nuts. So let's break this down into some easy to understand things that we get straight out of Scripture. First thing we need to really grasp the concept of is that what we consider Passover is not an entire week. Passover is simply an event. It's been what we call now the meal, right? That happened first time. It says you're going to eat this between the evenings. From the time that the sun dipped below the horizon to the time it was dark. That's when you were to eat it. It's not, we have to wait until, somebody's got to stand at the window and watch the sun when the sun goes down. Now, do we watch? Does it have to go down behind the houses across the street? Or does it have to actually go down behind the ground? That's the kind of stuff people get involved in. That's the kind of traditions that people, get nervous about. And, if you live in Alaska, do you have to eat Passover when it's sundown in Jerusalem? Right?
Right.
That's the kind of craziness that people do. Now, if you really want to go that way, go right ahead. Do what you got to do. But there's nothing in Scripture that tells us to do that. In fact, Passover the first time was not eaten in Israel.
No.
It was in Egypt.
Right.
So so instead of sundown in Israel, do we have to wait till it's like sundown in Cairo, in Egypt? Yeah. So you see how you can get caught up in the junk that gets accumulated with this. What Passover actually ushers in is a 7-day period known as the Feast of Matzah, or the Feast of Unleavened Bread, so to speak, is what we consider it. Now, more on getting hung up on the bread word in a few minutes. So it's two separate events. You have the meal, and then you have this Feast of Unleavened Bread, or this Feast of Matzah. And the reason there's two separate events here, I'm not going to get into that. That's for another lesson. But just be aware that there's two separate events. And I'm trying to build you up for this because it's going to get fun. And I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this too. So we first find where this is mentioned, of course, in Exodus chapter 12. And you're going to read verses 1 through 8.
The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt. This month will be the first month of the year for you. Both of you are to tell the whole community of Israel. On the 10th day of this month, each man must get one lamb. It is for the people in his house. There may not be enough people in his house to eat the whole lamb. Then he must share it with his closest neighbor. There must be enough lamb for everyone to eat. The lamb must be a 1-year-old male. It must have nothing wrong with it. This animal can be either a young sheep or a young goat. Keep the animal with you to take care of it until the 14th day of the month. On that day, all the people of the community of Israel will kill these animals. They will do this as soon as the sun goes down. The people must take some of the blood. They must put it on the sides and tops of the door frames. These are the door frames of the houses where they eat the lambs. On this night, they must roast the lamb over a fire. Then they must eat it with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast.
Okay. Now, aren't you glad I didn't give you the, like either the Complete Jewish Bible or the Tree of Life version where it actually has the Hebrew words in there? And they are more serious to read, but, the International Children's Bible does a very good job most of the time of simplifying these things for us. Of course, this passage is not the first time that we have matzah mentioned, unleavened bread mentioned. Actually, the first time that's actually mentioned in the Bible is in Genesis 19. We read that Lot baked unleavened bread for the messengers, for the angels that came to take him out of the city he was living in before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. So it's nothing new to them. They understood what it was. They knew what unleavened bread is. And there's a lot of legends about this, right? I love the way that some teachers and some pastors and some rabbis try to explain why the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Well, they're going to be traveling, and unleavened bread is lighter than regular bread. So you want to be careful of the weight, right? You can't... My background, I have actually packed horses in Montana. I've packed horses in Colorado. I've taken people up into the mountains and brought them safely out of the mountains on horseback, as you would see a pack train. If you imagine the old pack trains of the old times, that's what we did. I can tell you, if you take matzah horseback on a trip, you're going to wind up with crumbs. Okay, that's why I like to call this, I often refer to this week as the Feast of Crumbs. Because if you've ever used matzah, you get crumbs everywhere, right? I mean, it's...
When you break it, it just goes all over the table, the floor, everywhere.
It goes everywhere. Trust me, we use it all the time. In fact, because you're gluten-free, we use the gluten-free matzah year-round, and because of the taste, it's great. But we use it in place of crackers because it's so good.
Right.
But, you get used to the crumbs.
Yeah. Dustbusters.
You have to. So, think about that thing. It's so much easier to travel with risen bread because it stays together. Does it add a little weight? Not really, because the breads they were looking at were completely different than what you might think about packing a loaf of bread today. They didn't slice them into loaves. They made loaves, but they didn't slice them like we think of today. You go to the store and buy a loaf of sliced bread, right? They knew what flatbread was. They knew, they had wheat flour, they had barley flour. Remember that they're taught to make barley loaves, right? Because the spring of the year is, it begins when the barley's ripe, not when the wheat's ripe.
Right.
So they knew what these things are. They had all the information they needed to understand what's going on here. The unleavened bread comes from a foreshadowing that's going to take place much further in the future than where they're at now. That's why the whole week is surrounded by unleavened bread. They have the foreshadowing there. Remember, Paul talks in Hebrews, I believe it's chapter 10, that these feasts are actually shadows of good things to come. Not the actual things, but we get the images of them. So we're looking at this, and and I said I was going to poke a little bit of fun at this, and I've just done that because one of the traditions that people talk about is, it's so much easier to travel with matzah than it is a loaf of bread. No, it's not. We've traveled cross country with children, and a lot of times we'll stop and have crackers and sardines or something like that for lunch. It's messy. When you're traveling, you don't want messy. A lot of times
you don't want matzah in your car.
You don't want matzah in your car. That's for sure. So to get to the tradition of getting the leaven out of our houses. Okay, the origin. Oh wow, I can't speak today. The origin is actually found in Exodus 12:15, where it says, 7 days you're going to eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you're going to put away the leaven out of your houses, because whoever eats leaven for this 7-day period needs to be cut off from Israel. They need to be, they need to go away, because obviously you're not serious about this. And there's so much information in this verse that's overlooked. It is amazing what the Hebrew language and how Moses writes this. Even a lot of Hebrew readers don't grasp what's going on here. The spelling of the Hebrew word for leaven, or for, I think it's even today used for yeast, is seor. It's related to a word, and actually spelled exactly the same way as another Hebrew word, sa'ar, which means to remain or to stay. So the Hebrew, we actually get the body language of Moses saying, you're not going to eat this. And he's actually kind of giving a wink and a nod, you're not going to stay here either. You see where that goes? You see what he's doing with the language. English, we don't have a lot of those things. We have, like, the word cat. It can mean that cute little kitty, that you hold and pet and scratches you sometimes. It can mean a tiger or a mountain lion, right? Mm-hmm. But it can also mean a bulldozer.
Right.
So not quite the same thing, right? We don't get that body language type of thing. But when Moses is writing this, and the people are smart enough to know that it's related to this other word, he says, you're not going to eat this, but you're not going to stay here either. That's where we're getting back into the language. Because to understand those types of things in the language is to better understand the shadow pictures or the images that we have in these feasts. That's just one of the examples that I have time to go into. I don't want to take a whole lot of time with that today. Along with the instructions to remove leaven from the home, we have people today that go to sometimes ridiculous extremes, right?
Yes.
I have read and listened to, heard so many things. Now, you can actually make yeast from potatoes and flour and sugar and water. It's all you need. Things that are typically found in your home. You can make yeast from fruit and flour and sugar or honey and water. Things that are typically found in your home all the time, right?
Right.
I actually read an article, it's been a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago now, that because you can make yeast from these things that causes dough to rise, you've got to take the potatoes or the flour or the honey. It's best not to have any flour in your house at all. Well, how are you going to make matzah without flour?
Right.
How are you going to make matzo ball soup without flour?
Right.
To think you have to take these things out of your house is almost as ridiculous as we see the thing for 7 days you will eat nothing but unleavened bread, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to sit around for 7 days eating nothing but matzah all day long. No, that's not what it means. Exactly. You don't do that. And actually there's only a couple of days during this period that are considered Sabbath days. So the rest of the time you have to work. You have to do things. You have to accomplish things. It's not like the only thing you get to eat is matzah. You just don't eat anything with leaven in it. More on that in a second. I'll show you where that comes from. Baking soda. You don't have to get rid of the toothpaste that contains baking soda because it causes dough to rise.
Yeah, I don't plan on putting toothpaste in my flour. That's
you laugh,
nasty.
but people, that's how ridiculous people get with this. There is certain types of baking soda that you don't use to cook with anyway. It's used for other things, what's the word I want to use? Where you level the pH levels in a swimming pool. Mm-hmm. There's certain types of baking soda that's made specifically for that, and they're just not made for consumption. You shouldn't use them to put in your bread anyway, right? You shouldn't even use them to brush your teeth. You can use them for cleaning agents, right? But that's it. So, no, you don't have to get rid of that kind of stuff. I have heard that we're to not eat leavened bread, specifically bread, right? Because it says unleavened bread. That's not what it says in Hebrew. Are you ready for this? In Deuteronomy 16:3, you will eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days you will eat unleavened bread. Now, if you look at that in Hebrew, it doesn't say anything about bread. The Hebrew word lechem is not in that passage anywhere. Many people don't realize that the little town of Bethlehem is actually a combination of two Hebrew words, and it means bet, house, lechem, bread. Bethlehem is the house of bread. Christians, this is really important for you. You need to know where someone was born and why they say they're the bread of life, and all that goes with it. I'm I don't have time to get into that today. That's a whole other thing. One of these days, I'm going to do like a 3-hour podcast and explain all this stuff.
And just go on
And
every rabbit trail.
I'm just going to go down every rabbit trail there is.
It might be more than 3 hours.
It might be. It might take me a week to do that of 3-hour days. Here's the thing. Just because, I want to get back to what it literally says in Deuteronomy 16. You eat nothing that has leaven in it. Okay? You don't eat the things that you would mix up, like the potatoes and the flour to make yeast. You don't put that in something that you're going to eat for 7 days. Okay? And it literally reads, Lo tokal alo chametz. Eat nothing with leaven. Eat nothing that is risen. I don't want to add anything here because, again, people are going to go to extremes. Just because you can make yeast out of grapes and flour and either sugar or honey and water doesn't mean that you can't have wine. Okay? It's okay because wine is one of those things that are served at the Passover meal. Right? Don't go nuts with that. But you know, it's just because you can make yeast from grapes doesn't mean you got to pour the wine out.
Or maybe you want grapes and honey with your matzah crackers for lunch.
Right.
It's okay.
It's okay. We need to get back to the original intent of what's going on here. All these traditions, all of these things actually interrupt the imagery we get from these feasts. They interrupt the shadow pictures. What they do is I shouldn't say interrupt, they actually corrupt them. Because we lose the meaning. We lose what's really going on. And that is dangerous.
It kind of takes the importance out of what's trying to be said and putting your mind on other things instead of the actual meaning of where we're headed.
Absolutely. It distracts you from what's really happening. And it's sad that it does that. What all of this actually boils down to is quite simple. We take out from our homes anything that's already prepared that is designed to make dough rise. Okay? You take the packets of yeast, the prepared mixture of the potatoes or the fruit, and the flour and the honey or sugar and the water, the stuff that you're designing to do that with. Now, if you have no intention of using that 5-gallon bucket full of baking soda that's sitting in your garage and you use that to balance the pH in your swimming pool, it doesn't have to go away. Okay?
It can stay there.
It can stay there.
But you're not going to eat it.
You're not going to eat it.
Ever.
And because Deuteronomy 16:4 reads that no leaven is to be found in all your land, it actually says no leaven is to be seen. Now, if you've ever looked at pictures of Israel during the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and you look at, if you're fortunate enough to be able to see the pictures of the grocery stores, inside of the grocery stores, they will take tarps and literally cover
the leaven area.
Those things, where they have those things that are already prepared. They just cover them up, wrap them up so you can't even see them. You can't get to them. You can't get, they're just, they're behind the tarp. Everybody knows they're behind the tarp. You just can't see it because Deuteronomy 16:4 says you can't see it. Does this mean that you have to take all of those things that you would normally use and burn them? Some people do. But no, that's not what it means. It means you remove it out of your sight for a week. Now, I know that might be a surprise to some people, but you have to put those things away. You have to get them out of sight. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Is an English saying. Essentially, there are some things that each of us need to work out with our Creator in fear and trembling, right? You do what is right and proper for your household and for your family. But don't get caught up in the traditions. Don't lose sight of what these feasts are actually designed for. Don't go to such extremes that you are literally throwing money away. Okay? That the Almighty does not want you to be frivolous when it comes to throwing money away. He's given you some provisions. Use them wisely. You actually have to think about what you're doing. You can't, I know that the beginning of Matthew 5:17 is don't think, but he doesn't stop there. He keeps speaking, and he gives you a reason that he said that, right? It's not, he said I don't have to think anymore, so thank goodness I don't have to do that anymore. That's a chore I don't have to worry about. I can just listen to whatever sounds good to me and do whatever. No, you don't do that. You actually have to think about what you're doing. You have to be the one to decide, am I going to be tempted? Or, should I put that somewhere where it's out of sight, out of mind, not worry about it for 7 days? Now, of course, you're going to want to take anything that is leaven and get rid of that, because it will probably not survive a 7-day period. Although,
right.
With some of the modern chemicals they're putting in stuff today, Twinkies last for 100 years, right? Excuse me. You can, be reasonable about these things. You strive to do the best you can do, not the least you can do, right? It's not about just barely getting by. It's about getting to the meaning of why we're doing this to start with. Not just because the Almighty gives us some, ridiculous set of instructions and says, I don't care if you did buy that package of $3 yeast last week, you have to burn it. That's not what he's saying.
Cover it up.
Cover it up. If you need to, take it out and put it in your garage. Now, there's some people that will literally sell this stuff to their neighbor. Mm-hmm. I want you to think about this for a second, right? If I am selling, because I don't want it in my house, why would I let my neighbor have it in his house?
That's not a very good testimony.
That's not a very good testimony, is it? Pawn it
else.
off on somebody else. It's kind of like hiring somebody. I can't drive on Sabbath. I can't drive on Shabbat, but you can take me. Okay, so I'm going to pay you today so you can take me where I need to go. That's not how we do things, right? You don't take advantage of people. You attempt to live in such a way that they see that you're doing the things you're supposed to be doing, right?
That you want them to follow and do by your example.
Absolutely. Don't forget, these feasts are for our instructions. They are for our information. They're for our understanding. The Almighty, He already knows what He designed them for. He says, He thought about this, and He says, how can I teach these humans in all of their ignorance? Right? That's the best way I know to say that. How can I take this stupid bunch of people? Okay, and let's just be blunt. The Almighty's going, how can I take this stupid bunch of people and teach them what these things mean? So he comes up with these images that we have in the feast, and what do?
We botch it.
We mess it up so bad. We mess it up so bad. Everything we can do to interrupt and disrupt His plans and His instructions, we do. Don't miss some of the greatest opportunities that we have to develop that personal relationship. I hear so many people, I wish I could have that relationship with the God that Adam had, or that Noah had, or that Moses had, or that David had.
You could, but just stop complicating it.
Absolutely. You can't complicate it. Don't be your own roadblock, right?
Right.
don't be your own worst enemy. It's, you know, we were having this conversation with a couple of people yesterday, you know, when we were talking about marriage, and it's like, look, no, it was the day before. When two people get married, you know, you have this agreement, right? And if one of you violates the agreement, it's going to be expensive.
Right.
When you enter this relationship with the Almighty, don't mess it up. It's going to be expensive. Mm-hmm. It was a really expensive lesson when Adam and Eve ate the fruit.
Oh, it was. We're still suffering from it.
We're still paying for that.
Yes.
Absolutely, we're still paying for that lesson. When you have the opportunity to do things that gain you what you say you want, and then you kind of look around and you say, well, they're not doing it like that over there. That looks like fun. Oh, that's different over there. They're doing it even different. Should I be doing that? No, you look at what Scripture says. You do what it says to the best of your ability, the best of your knowledge, and the best of your understanding. And you make the decisions that are going to be the best benefit for yourself, your family, your household. That's what it's about. Don't lose sight of these images that are here. You find them. And you're not going to find them in most of the traditions. You're actually going to find them in what it says in the original language, in the original intent. You know, just like Moses. You know, don't eat anything with leaven. And by the way, you're not going to remain here either. You're not going to stay here. It's going to be okay. Now, part of what I'm going to talk about actually at our Passover on Saturday gets involved with this too. Because I want to look at what kind of houses the Hebrew people were living in. Because these were the houses that they inherited from their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents, right? Mm-hmm. When they first came in, and because they were related to Joseph, they were treated like royalty. Think about that. They weren't living in what we consider slave shacks. They were living in very nice places. So is it any wonder that when Moses said, we're leaving, they kind of, what do you mean we're leaving?
We got nice houses.
We got
mansions.
We got it good here. You know, we might have to be doing things, but we got it good here. So, you know, for the people who are attending our Passover celebration, that's one of the things you can look forward to hearing about. We don't often take the opportunity when we get caught up in our traditions, and again, the Seder is a great way to tell the lesson. It's a good way to teach. But when that's all you do, you miss so much more of the lessons that can be brought into teaching about Passover, that can be taught teaching about the Feast of Unleavened Bread and all of the other feasts as well. Don't get hung up in the traditions. Look for those hidden messages. Look for the body language that's actually in the original language. Look for the things that you don't normally look for. Learn to ask the questions you might not think about asking because you've never heard them before. Don't be afraid to investigate. Okay? You know, there are so many tools available today to teach us and help us as we study that there's no excuse anymore. We have no reason for failure when it comes to Bible study. Not anymore. There's too many things out there and too many people willing to assist us. So I hope that now you understand a little bit more about why removing leaven from the home, yes, it's important, but there's so many traditions that are involved in it. Don't get hung up in the traditions. See what the reason is, figure it out, think about it, and do what's best for you and your household. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I I think I've probably added enough today.
Nah.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Absolutely. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us, listening whenever you can, wherever you can, all over the world. Don't forget to go to givegodknowledge.com. Check us out there and see everything that's there to see. Until Thursday, many blessings, everyone.